So what we would like to share with the board and the community tonight is, as you know, over the last few months, we've been developing, presenting the budget. We had a series of activities we went to, community forums, surveys that helped us develop the budget. So this evening's not to necessarily to recap that whole process, but to share one last time where the budget falls, what the numbers are, a little bit about the three-point budget, and to answer any final questions that the community may have on the budget process. So this is our official budget hearing. And with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Joe and Greg to walk through. This is a budget presentation that in a lot of senses is what we've been sharing with groups throughout the community. So some of you may have seen this before. It's modified a little bit, but this is what we're sharing with the community, and we'll continue to share it over the next couple days prior to the actual budget vote. So.
Sure. So when we're building our budget, we always begin with our mission to teach all students with the belief that all students can learn and the acceptance of our responsibility to teach them. You'll recall last summer the board set some goals. Our academic goal was around incremental achievement. Mr. Carlavati is often heard saying, how are we better today than we were yesterday, and what do we need to do to get better tomorrow? So that role of continuous improvement. And the board has been extremely supportive of us in that endeavor, recognizing that if you're going to charge us with continuous improvement, you need to support us with that, and you have, and we thank you for that. And I think this budget is reflective of that. John mentioned in his opening that we have had more community and stakeholder input from the onset, from the beginning as we built our budget. We had surveys, we had roundtables, and we're going to continue to promote those, continue to invite stakeholders to the table so that we can get their input and have a more transparent and communal budget process. I think we made great progress toward that end this year. We're going to continue in that direction. At the same time, our administrators worked with the leadership at their buildings to talk about their needs, what they're seeing, what the data is telling them, what their next action step is towards continuous improvement. And we don't do the budget in a vacuum. So while all this process is going on with what we need, there's also an eye on what that reality is, those economic realities. And the board is very aware of those economic realities, and that's something that is a part of our process too. We recognize that there are some constraints. So with an eye towards continuous improvement, we are recommending some restorations. In the area of math at the high school and middle school, we're looking at putting academic intervention specialists in those buildings to support students who are struggling, to work side by side with teachers and in a co-teaching model at times as needed, and then to work with small groups. At the elementary levels, we're really looking at adapting our curriculum, and in order for us to maintain alignment both vertically between the grade levels and horizontally or within the grade level, we need some support. And so we're looking to our math and ELA coordinators to help support teachers in those endeavors. We had reduced our librarian at OP a few years ago, and although Deb Meyer has made that work very well at OP, it doesn't send the message that we want to send. We think our librarians, especially with the new Common Core state standards, the new emphasis on research, it's more important now than ever that we have fully staffed libraries. Our librarians are more than working with students. They do a lot of work with teachers, and our teachers are relying more heavily upon our librarians to get the materials and resources they need to help our kids do research. And finally, physical education at the high school and middle school levels. One of those, when you become so efficient that you don't have any wiggle room in your schedule, it constricts a lot of things. So this not only allows us to better meet the phys ed mandate, but it also allows flexibility within the high school and middle school schedules to do some different things, both within the area of phys ed, maybe adaptive, more adaptive P or different options for kids, but also in other areas where, particularly at the middle school, where the schedule is a little bit more flexible without a shared staff in that area. So when we talk about economic realities, there's several things, and I won't take as much time as we have in the past with these. The economic climate is a reality. We're coming out of the recession, but schools don't move as fast as the economy. So the lowest lows, we're at the tail. So when the economy sinks low, we follow it down, and we probably never get as low as the lowest low. And as the economy rebounds, we probably never get as high as the highest high. But economic realities reflect our community's ability to support our budget. And so as a school district, it's important that we respond in kind. State support, we've talked a lot about the Gap Elimination Act. We are getting more money today than we did in previous years, but we're still lagging behind the promise that the state's made. There still is a gap elimination that affects our ability to program for kids, and we have to keep that in mind, even as unfunded mandates continue to mount. Gannett is a big, we'll just simply say Gannett is a big taxpayer. $5 million a year, roughly a quarter of our levy comes from Gannett. That's about 12% of our overall budget, and we're working hard. The board is working hard with the legislators, and we're planning for that eventuality. But that's a reality for us. If in the next 4 years we're going to see about $1 million less in levy from Gannett, and we'll see if they truly do decommission completely, what that means for our budget. It's reality. Gannett also pays taxes to our community, to the county, and so that sales tax piece, about almost $900,000 in our sales tax share, comes from that. It's a reality that if the town and county lose a significant revenue, that they may need to consider our share of the sales tax. John Smith has talked to us a lot about the potential long-term impact of the lake level legislation that's going on. And so obviously a reduction in property value would lead to a reduction in taxes able to be collected. And then the tax levy limit. You know, that restricts our ability to react or respond in a quick manner to changing economic environment. And it also sets an expectation of our community that we would be within that 2% tax levy limit. And as Greg has explained many times, that is not actually a 2% tax limit. What it is one piece of a very long formula, which for us, we would be permitted to raise our taxes by formula over 4%. But of course we're not suggesting that today. So we're within our tax levy limit. But the real issue is taxes we don't collect today, or restricting our growth today, restricts our ability to grow tomorrow. And so we have to keep these factors in mind when we build budgets.
So when we look at the numbers on the chart here, the first column shows you what our current budget is for the 14-15 school year, and that total is $44,471,060. The column in the middle shows you what the proposed budget for the 2015-16 school year is, $45,932,080, and that is a $1,459,220 increase. And you can see the amount of increase by the three different parts. The program being everything to do with teaching and learning. Administrative is the areas to assist us in running the school district. And capital is our debt service as well as maintaining our buildings and grounds. So you can see the lion's share of the change is in the program portion. And just drawing your attention to the pie chart on the bottom, it shows you that 79% of our total budget is spent on program, which is where we want to drive the majority of our resources. When you look at the cost drivers in next year's budget, medical insurance is going to go up $443,000. That's an 8.7% increase. We have not increased anyone's benefit levels. That's just the cost of doing the same business next year. Typically in the medical field, you have what they call medical trend of 10% a year. So if you don't change any benefits, you can anticipate a 10% increase every year, and that gets divided up amongst the hospitals, the doctors, the drug companies. They all have a piece of that increase. We're at the tail end of our building project, so we have to add some, we have new debt service coming on the books. We have to start paying that mortgage, so there's about a $526,000 increase in our debt service payments. Wages for the staff at Wayne Central. This year we negotiated a new contract with the CSCA, and we have a tentative agreement with a contract for the WTA. The administrator's contract is also in place. Those contracts call for wage increases for the staff of $1.1 million. Our workers' comp costs continue to climb even if our experience doesn't get any worse, because those costs are tied in closely with the medical field. And technology, we're not increasing any of our technology purchases, but we're just trying to change, rather than using leftover money or carryover money, we're putting that money in the budget up front, which was another change we made to our budget in response to being more transparent so the taxpayers know exactly what we were asking for. State aid, this chart shows you what we currently get from the state, $14.5 million. Next year's proposed state aid, with the state budget being passed on time. Thank you for, I think, the third or fourth year in a row they've been able to do that. So we're slated to get $15.5 million. So when you look at that increase, you would say, wow, that's great, we're getting $1 million more. But if you remember the last slide I just showed you, $500,000 in debt service will drive in about $400,000 in aid. So part of the reason we're getting more money is because we've spent more money. The balance of that increase is money that the state has applied to the gap elimination piece. What the gap elimination adjustment is about 4 or 5 years ago, when the economy in the state bottomed out, they actually could not afford the state aid that they had promised and put into law by formula for school districts. So they basically ran the formulas. They figured out what they could afford for each school district and put in a negative number to bring the formula number down to what they were going to pay us. That reduction for Wayne Central was $2 million. And little by little, the state has started to climb out of that, which is good. But even with the increase that we're seeing here, we're still down $537,000 from that initial $2 million hit. So this chart here just gives you a graphic illustration of our state aid history, and you can see what we were talking about, how in 2010 and 11 things started to bottom out and went down for a couple years, and they have slowly started to climb. But like I said, you know, our costs have continued to go up since 2008, 2009, and basically we've had to use reserve funds during that low point to hang on to the program and keep our tax rate low, which we were able to do. We are continuing to use reserves that the school district has to help keep our budget down. Next year's budget calls for us using $65,000 to pay for our unemployment costs out of a reserve. The retirement contribution reserve, this is a reserve that allows the school district to use that money to pay our ERS costs for our CSEA people. Workers' comp, the district spends about $360,000. That money will come out of our workers' comp reserve. And applied fund balance is money that we are estimating to have unspent at the end of this year that we will use to help fund next year's budget. But in essence, $2.7 million of one-time money to fund the $46 million proposed budget. So we just have to be careful, because one-time money is exactly what it says. Once you spend it, it's not there for future spending. So we just have to be careful. Other reserves that allow us to also keep our budget costs down: our bus purchase reserve. We're slated to purchase 6 buses next year if the public approves Proposition 2, which is to recreate our bus reserve for another 5 years or $4 million. So if that gets approved, we will be purchasing 6 buses for $556,000. EBLR reserve, or employment benefits liability reserve, is a reserve where sometimes when staff members retire by contract, we have to pay them certain money. We can take it out of that reserve. And tax certiorari, when we have taxpayers that challenge their assessment, rather than budgeting for those costs, we take those costs out of a reserve. So once again, about $780,000 in area, and be able to give that relief to our budget and keep our tax rate down. So when you look at our levy, it's always been our goal, regardless of what the state aid chart showed, to try to keep that number very flat as much as possible. And you can see over the time we've done a pretty good job with that. We are recommending for next year an increase going from $19,672,000 up to $20.3 million. That represents a 3.48% or $684,000 increase. Part of that obviously is attributable to what we talked about earlier with what's on the horizon for Gannett. If by chance Gannett, their livelihood doesn't last beyond the next 4 or 5 years, we have to plan for that. We can't wait for that moment to start dealing with that. So part of that increase is planning for that. And this is actually probably one of our more favorite charts. It shows our tax rate. So you can see that through the toughest economic challenges that I think the state has probably ever faced, at least in my lifetime, we were able to lower our tax rate. And even though we're recommending an increase going from $20.55 up to an estimated $21.25, you can see that that rate is still below what it was in 2006, 2007. So I think through long-range planning and careful financial management, we were able to, survive what happened with the state while the economy starts to climb back. So, and that, I just stress, that's an estimated tax rate because the tax rolls do not become final until July, and in August we'll be asking the board to set the rate, but we do anticipate that it would be close to that number. Budget propositions to be voted on May 19th. The first one is the proposed budget for next year. As we stated, $45,930,280. Proposition 2 to be put before the voters is to establish a new bus reserve. Our current bus reserve expires June 30th of this school year. So we're asking the voters to authorize a new reserve of $4 million or 5 years, whichever threshold we meet, we reach first. And if Proposition 2 passes, the ability to spend out of that new reserve $556,000 to purchase 3 large buses and 3 small buses.
Okay, we have 3 open seats for this upcoming board election. Good news is we have 3 great candidates, Jeremy Eaton, Matt Prinzing, and I believe Miss Whitman, Carrie Whitman, may be in our audience this evening, which is great. Miss Moore, Karen Moore, has served her time and has graciously decided not to run, and she will be greatly missed, and I'm sure we'll have some conversations about that before the end of the year. But we want people to know that. What I would say is oftentimes when we have uncontested races, sometimes we don't get the strong voter output, so we want to make sure that people realize that just because we have uncontested races, it's important for them to come out and vote for our budget, and that's what we have on this slide, is just to make sure people realize today is our budget our annual budget hearing. Tomorrow there'll be an additional presentation at the high school cafeteria starting at 9 a.m. for anyone who's interested. What did I say? Saturday. Thank you. That's why I got 2 people up here with me. Saturday at 9 a.m. to continue with our budget presentation and continue to answer questions that anyone in the community may have. Then the important date, the budget vote on Tuesday, May 19th, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. up at our high school gymnasium. Important date, so we want to encourage everyone to come out and vote. Again, we can't tell you how to vote, but we want you to come out and voice your opinion for us through that vote.